Good evening. This is Edward with sonsofgod.com, and it's March 2nd, Saturday evening. Ann and I send our greetings to the handful of you that stand with us in this pursuit of resurrection life at this time. I would say, when I say a handful, maybe there's a dozen, maybe a couple dozen. Don't really know. But we send our greetings. We are in the final pursuit of what we know is destined to happen, and that is resurrection life and the transformation of our body, which is really the seal of our sonship. So this evening is just going to be a short meditation. It's not necessarily a word. I don't know that there's going to be any scriptures with this. But we'll title this meditation, Have You Seen the Elephant? We'll have a little bit of fun with this. And I can assure you, if you're listening to this word, then you have seen the elephant. But the question is, how much of the elephant, or what part of the elephant have you seen? Now, I've used this symbolism in the past before, but what we're going to just briefly talk about, and is the very thing that keeps us on our face before God, is both that which we are dealing with in our ability to see and know what God is doing in the earth at this time, as well as how we are dealing with those that we have in our close proximity, whether it's family members, a spouse, or other relationships. And so basically, what we've been struggling with, coming through, all of us, everyone that has been called to sonship, really, or just called by God, period, has been realizing that as much as we see, there is still a great deal that we don't see. What we have seen over and over the years has been this, what I would call, vision of the elephant. We know that the elephant has a tusk, has ears, a big body, has legs. And so often, you'll say, do you know what God is doing? Or God is doing whatever. And someone will come and say, yes, I know what God is doing. God is doing this in the earth. He's bringing healings and wonders. Another person will come and say, well, I see what God is doing. He's bringing judgments in the earth, and he's judging the iniquity. And another will come and say, well, I see what God is doing. He's bringing sonship and resurrection life. Are any of these incorrect? No, they're not. They're all an aspect of the elephant. What God is doing in the earth and is doing at this time is so vast and so broad that even in our moments of greatest clarity, we are still seeing in part. And we know that we're in this transition. As much as we don't want to be in this transition, as much as we want this transition to be over, we're still in this transition. And that transition is dictated by virtue of how much you're able to really see the Lord, because that's the promise, isn't it? When you see him, you'll be like him, for you'll see him as he is. Well, in many ways, the Lord is the elephant as well. You see a certain aspect, you change, and you become like him. If you were to see the fullness of the Lord, the fullness of God, well, there would be an absolute entire change, which we really haven't experienced yet. And so Paul has referenced seeing the Lord. I think it was in Corinthians. So we go from plateau to plateau in God, from grace to grace, from level to level. And with each level, you see more of the Lord. And as you see more of him, you're changed. Unfortunately, it's been a process. And it's tied into the purging, purifying, and refining that Malachi speaks of. Because the more the dross is removed in our life. And you know how Malachi refers to that? He refers to it as the smelter, smeltering silver. And the Lord uses that as a reference point. As the silver is put to intense heat, the dross that is in the silver floats up to the top. And the silversmith at that point is able to ladle off the dross so that he has the pure silver. But it takes that intense fire and heat to have the dross rise to the top that it can be ladled off. And so the Lord uses that as an example of how his dealings are with his sons. He puts you through the fire, but not just any fire, the intense fire. So intense that, like the three children, that were commanded to step into the fire at the time of Daniel. And they stepped into the fire. And yet the soldiers that brought them to the fire, they themselves were extinguished. They were cremated, but it didn't touch the children. I think it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So this process of the dross being removed, of the silver, of the heat, is nothing new to us. But as we come closer to the completion of this, our sight begins to open up more and more and more. And all of a sudden you can look at the elephant, and whereas in the past maybe you saw a trunk, now all of a sudden you see the trunk, the head, maybe the body. It's coming into focus. Isn't that kind of bothers me at times when you're looking and you see, but yet you realize you don't quite see. It's not quite clear enough. You say, Lord, I need more clarity. I see, but I don't see. I see, men as trees walking. It's there, but it's not there. And that's what this has been like. This has been the path of sonship. Unfortunately, the elephant hasn't really come into full clarity, but we're seeing more and more of it. And so, you can be around different ones, and they say, oh, well, I'll tell you what God is doing. This is what he's doing, or this is what he's doing. And you realize, well, they're fortunate in as much as they see the elephant, but they only see this part of it. And that would be just the segment of Christians whose heart is really given. Because when we say see, we mean see. We don't mean, well, we've read it and everyone has read it and this is what's happening in the paper, so we're in the end times. But they don't really know what they're talking about. Even Christians, they don't have any idea what they're talking about because they don't see it with the eyes of their spirit. They just see it with the soul because they're reading what everyone else is reading. So yeah, I tell you what God is doing. It's this, and we're in the times of judgment, so on and so forth. But they really don't know that because they haven't really seen it with the eyes of their spirit. So we're talking about seeing, not seeing. I know it's a bit of a play on words, but that's the problem. So much of Christianity, they really don't even see the elephant. And take those who don't even have that element of God in their lives that are atheists, they absolutely don't see the elephant. In fact, they probably think you're seeing pink elephants. But know this. The elephant is coming into view now with much greater clarity. And so that's why we're commanded and admonished to stay open, flexible, and teachable. Don't think you have it wired and say, well, this is it and nothing else. I know what God is doing and that's it. Or however we might, lock ourselves into a box. the last thing we want to do is lock ourselves into any box whatsoever and say, well, this is what God is doing and that's it. Or this is how it is and that's it. Because that's not the case. Our understanding is expanding, and our ability to know the truth is expanding. And I'm sure you realize that. We've talked about that before. Our ability to know the truth is a gift. It's predicated upon the refining process that you've gone through, where you really begin to know the truth. Now, are we talking knowing the truth mentally or knowing the truth spiritually? What happens when you know the truth spiritually? The truth sets you free. Who is the truth? Well, we know it's Christ, of course. But when you know the truth sets you free. And until you know the truth, or you could say that aspect of the Lord, there's so many ways we can dissect what we're saying here. But when you begin to really know the truth, you indeed are set free from past paradigms, opinions, and the box that you've lived in. And God just springs you out of the jail cell and said, hey, you're free. So it's an interesting situation. We do see the elephant, but we're beginning to see more and more of the elephant. Now, on the flip side, and we're just talking here, this is just family. This applies to you personally as well. Because people that you know or that have association with you, in whom they feel that they know who you are, it's the same thing. They may see you and say, yes, I know you. It's like what happened to the Lord. I know who you are. You're Jesus, the carpenter's son. Well, that was one very small part of the elephant. They didn't really know who Jesus was. And people will look at you and have looked at you, and they know who you are. But they really don't have any clue who you are. They see one part of the elephant, one aspect of you that they have held on to for years and years, and that's their determination. This is who you are. But we're admonished in the Spirit, in the Word, know no one any longer after the flesh, but know them after the Spirit. Very hard to do for soul bond relationships that we have and that are on our periphery. All they can do is look at you and say, I know who you are. I see one little aspect of the elephant. But they don't have a clue who you really are. And that's been one of many challenges that the sons are living with and have lived with, is how to relate, how to function in this world but not be of it, how to move in and amongst relationships, those whom you love, those whom you care for, and yet not be restrained and locked in by virtue of their inability to really see the elephant, which is you. So we bless this tonight. Like I said, this is just a meditation, just something to think about. God is opening up your eyesight. He is extending the tent pegs of your dwelling. The house you've lived in is not big enough for you. So God's extending its tent pegs and making a much larger area for you to live in. So what are we doing? We're contending for the final release of resurrection life. Is there anything else that's happening with that? Well, judgment's happening. Are we specifically decreeing judgment in the realm of spirit? Not necessarily. It's already been put in motion. God is already down the road. And as I told an individual last week, we must understand that the sons of God are judgment. There are many aspects of Christ, because he was the embodiment of so many aspects of the Father, as the sons are the embodiment of so many aspects of the Lord Jesus Christ. And one aspect of that is judgment. The sons are the spirit of judgment in the earth. Whether you speak the word or not, wherever the sole of your foot doth trod, it belongs to you. How? Because the judgment is just emanating from the sons. So Ann and I send our blessings. Amen.